everyone, this is Hedgie. Sorry about being a little bit late. Um, this is a off night. We had a grocery delivery yesterday, so I couldn't actually start. And I'm running a little bit behind today. Sorry about that. So I'm back, and we are going to be cooking a creamy chicken casserole with spinach and artichokes and mushrooms. And it is basically combining the idea of a spinach artichoke dip with chicken casserole to actually make a meal out of it. Now, spinach and artichoke dip is very popular with a lot of people. My husband doesn't particularly care for artichokes, but I figure he can pick them out in this case. I do have the recipe up already on my Discord. And hey, Badass Mama, welcome in. How are you doing today? Is everything going okay for you and your husband? You don't have to go into details if you don't want to, but it's do wish you both well. So I'm kind of curious about how it's going. This is a fairly simple recipe. It is one that I am going to put together here and do the stovetop version. The recipe that I have on the Discord is the baked version, which really isn't that different. It's just that you put it in the oven for about 25 minutes to get everything bubbly and browned on top. This starts out with boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And it will take, I am still moving it around, sorry, apologize. It will take 6 to 8 large size boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And I am using 8 of them because we are pretty heavy into meat here. And these are somewhat thawed. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your chicken has what you want to have on it. You want to take off the extra fat. You want to take off any bone shards or any little bits like that you find that you don't really want to be eating. There's sometimes little bits of tendon that get left on, and sometimes there's little bits of cartilage from when they deboned it, and that's just it's just a fault of the processing. So I always make sure I look for those, because especially when you're talking bone and cartilage, I mean, you can get a little bit of fat and not be too horribly grossed out. So but if you chomp onto a bone shard, it can ruin your day in a major way. You can also break teeth and end up having to go to the dentist, and that's nobody's idea of fun. So I am going to start with removing the bits of chicken that I don't want to be using. And then I will get started on the onion. The onion actually needs to go in there first, and I should have started with that, but I didn't. I can just set these aside for a little while when I get done with them until it's their time to cook. Now, you can actually buy baby spinach now, fresh from the markets. It's a common thing that they stock all the time, so that's pretty nice. And yes, you can buy artichokes in a can. That is actually what I have here. These are from Napoleon, and you have to make sure they're not marinated. You can add marinated artichokes. It just adds a little extra seasoning. The seasoning that's in this is similar to the recipe for marinated artichokes. It's got oregano and basil and rosemary in it. And but the other thing that the marinated artichokes get you, they're more expensive, first of all. It's like anywhere between $3 to 5 or even more, depending on the brand, dollars for a small can of marinated artichokes. This is a 15-ounce can of quartered artichokes. You can also buy just artichoke hearts, um, and use those if you prefer. I actually like the leaves, so um, and they're the same price. It's about $5 for a can. It's like $4.50 at an expensive store, and it gives you a nice quantity of them, and they're already cooked, and they're not pickled. If you get them in a can, they are salty, but they aren't pickled, so that's a benefit. Um, I'm not really sure how well the pickling flavor would mix in with the flavors of cream sauce, so I'm gonna guess not well. Um, so I'm going to finish eating with the chicken before I move on. I will just basically check it all over here and then put it back in this container for when it needs to go. And yeah, chicken there's a little bit of bone shard there, so we need to make sure we cut that out. I always cut a little extra deep just so I make sure I get it all. It's nothing like going to the irritation of deboning and fixing your chicken so that you've got everything objectionable off of it and then you miss some. So this recipe doesn't call for diced chicken, it actually calls for sliced chicken. So what we are going to do is make this into chicken slices like we would if we were going to make fajitas or even something like a chicken stroganoff. Well, this isn't. I love artichokes, honestly, badass mama. But I grew up eating them, and the way we eat them in the family is we basically pickle them in hot water. We take salt and apple cider vinegar and water, and we boil the artichokes in that, and it's a fairly strong pickling. And they get tender, and we eat them with mayonnaise. And you could use a hollandaise sauce, but mayonnaise is kind of like a quick version of a hollandaise in a way. Um, so that's how we grew up eating it. Now the ones in the cans don't have any of that pickling flavor. What they do have is they're kind of salty, but they're tender. They're very mild flavored. They don't really have a lot of flavor in and of themselves. So unlike the ones that are actually pickled and put into marinated artichokes are lightly pickled, by the way. You can buy chicken strips if you want to use diced chicken. If you want to shred up a leftover rotisserie chicken, you can do that if you want to. I know you can buy diced chicken, or you could even use chicken tenderloin strips if you want to. That's the small part of the breast that's underneath if you really want to. You just have to make sure that you get it cooked all the way. So, moving through these. They vary in how thawed they've been. Some of the bigger pieces are less thawed, but that's okay. We're going to be cooked in the pan here for the most part because I'm not going into an oven cooking later. And these are probably about half an inch wide strips, the length of the chicken breast or chicken thigh. You could use chicken breast if you wanted to as well. I just like the thigh because being a fattier meat, it has more flavor and it's a little moister, which is nice as long as you can tolerate the word moist. Can you use chicken fingers and forget the rest? No, you cannot. If you want to have chicken fingers, go to McDonald's and get some McNuggets. which, brings up the fact that chicken McNuggets are formed chicken pieces and they're not actually cut from a chicken. If you were going to make your own chicken nuggets, you'd take a chicken breast, pound it to the same thickness, and then just cut it up into pieces, bread them, and fry them. Yes, my husband likes to heckle me. Okay, so that's the chicken dealt with, and now I will be putting all that aside because I don't need this again. If my husband could come get it, that would be awesome. I'm kind of working. With a little less space than usual here. And I always wash my hands with a antibacterial hand wash here. Make sure I kill any bacteria and germs on it. I know, I'm sorry, Ben. Warm up my fingers a little bit. Now, I've cheated considerably on this. Almost everything is already cut up for me except for the chicken breasts and the onion. That's no big deal. I get a big package of mushrooms, and it's not really any difference in price between having it be a stop here just for a second. It's not really a difference in price to have it be a sliced mushroom where it's already pre-sliced than to get whole mushrooms and slice them yourself. And it saves you a lot of time, which is pretty necessary if you're talking about weeknight cooking. So I'm get my mouse out of the way because I don't need my mouse there. And another thing here. All right. So I have got another cutting board here. And once again, this is a sweet onion and this is a bigger one. You see it has a root end here where you got the little roots coming out, and then it has a sprout end where if this was a green onion, this would be where the green part grows out of it. And you want to cut that top part off, which is where the onion grows up. Not cut deep enough. You want to leave the seed, the root end alone because you don't want to have your onion as you're trying to cut it, fall apart all over your board and shift a lot while you're slicing it. If you leave that root end intact, it will hold the leaves of the onion, the layers, all together. So that's why I leave that intact when I'm cutting an onion. So I clean off the onion skin and cut off the top of the onion. Get rid of the rubbish. And again, every time that I'm looking at my food, whether it's the meat or the produce, milk, cheese, any of that, I always make sure that it is in good condition and that it is something that I would want to feed my husband or my family or myself. And if it's not, it gets thrown away. So, all right, now we take and we cut down through this root and I set it where I want it and put my hand flat on top so that when it cuts suddenly through it, it's not going to come down on my finger or my hand, which can, lose you a hand. Lose you a finger, actually, not a hand, but you'll lose your finger if you do that. I still have a wee little bit of that growth end in here. Sometimes it does that. It's just a little stem that you need to finish cutting out. And then I'm going to dice these. So I take and I make slices that do not go all the way through the onion. And I'm using my fingernails to hold onto this onion so it doesn't shift around while I'm trying to cut things into it. And I always move my fingers away from the blade. It's always important to keep your fingers away from the blade. Then we cut down. And again, not all the way through to the root, because we want this to hold together while we're cutting it. It's a little easier with a smaller knife, but I didn't choose wisely between my cutting knives when I was cutting the chicken. So then we just cut a small dice here. Don't quite have this set up completely the way I normally would. It got a little late start. Errands to run. My father is coming home from the hospital tomorrow, and there's been a lot. I would say diced. Cubed is a little bit bigger. It's not a mince, so it could be anywhere between, I would say, a half-inch square to a quarter-inch square. Larger than a half-inch, and you're talking about a chop versus a dice, and smaller than a quarter, and you're talking about a mince. And we are not looking for minced. I do like to have a little bit of an onion presence in this, so I am going to cut off about 3 tablespoons of butter and put it in here. And that is a deep frying pan, and that is going on a little on the other side of medium. Is there a problem, honey? There's a lot of things going on. Okay. While I'm doing this, I see my screen is flickering wildly as my husband is going in and changing things on my computer. It's a little disorienting. I want to see what it is he's doing, and Anyway, so we get that butter going and getting it melting. And while we do that, I am going to just add the onion to it and then work on the other half. Want to make sure you don't get any paper in it or the little roots, because they're not pleasant to eat. And I usually make about 3 cuts across it. It's about a half-inch. This is about a half-inch dice. It's enough that when I'm cooking something in a casserole or it's been sauteed on the stovetop, the onions don't melt away and just kind of disappear. It's still running. Oh, the music isn't coming through. All right. Is it still off, or did you fix that? Okay. Yeah, I hear it all the time through my computer since my headset is connected to the computer. That's for that onion. You never, I guess I'll do it all with a whisk. Okay, so that's it for the cutting that's involved. Don't think I'm gonna be able to get away from actually having a spatula in here because I can't stir chicken with a spoon with a whisk. But the idea is that you basically sweat these onions out, which is what it's called when you cook them till they're translucent, but only just. And yes, please enjoy my winter sweater I'm wearing, my Lincoln shirt. Yeah, I know the chicken can get in there. The spoonchula appears, a wild spoonchula. Must have fallen out of my purse. Not the spoonchula. He also picked up a lip. Chapstick, basically. Fell on the floor. Anyway, I think I'm gonna have to get a new spoonchula. Oh no, my pink spoonchula is starting to wear out. I use it practically everything I cook with. I use the spatula. Oh shit. Hold on.
You turned the AC off, did you?
Are we still on?
I can still hear you.
Okay.
The AC's going to come back on.
No, I turned it off. I just turned it off. Oh look, it's coming back on.
Like I said.
Sorry about that. If we run the air conditioner that's next to us off of this, when the power comes on, it has a tendency to blow our circuit. So because all of our computers and such are on the same circuit with my hot plate and everything else we've got. So we have got the onions cooking in there. This is going to call for about 16 ounces of sliced white mushrooms, which I will start in there once the onions are a little closer to being done. They have just gotten started in here. So now I am going to be mimicking the flavors of a marinated artichoke. And to do that, I'm going to be adding in a tablespoon of parsley. This is an apartment. We don't have any choice at all on our power. We live with what we have. So if it was a house, well, yeah, it would be nice to have a house and a backup generator, but we don't have that option. So, and I've got half of a teaspoon of basil. So this is a creamy recipe, but it does have the Italian spices in it. And I'm going to get the oregano. Again, half a teaspoon. I don't want it to be overwhelming. I just want it to have a little bit of the flavors of a marinated artichoke without all the extra oil that a marinated artichoke adds in there. And I've got half a teaspoon of rubbed sage. And that's going in there. And I can already smell the spices getting warmed up. And starting to perfume the air, shall we say. And this is rosemary, and I have got it in a grinder that's not wanting to work right now. And I am going to be adding a 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary to this. Rosemary is a very strong herb, and it can really overpower things if you let it, especially if you use it whole. If you use it whole, it's going to be like a twig, which kind of interferes with the taste of things. Your texture's off. It's going to be like you're eating pine needles, basically, if you don't at least crush them, if not grind them. I like to use another thing about crushing or grinding your herbs first, especially things like rosemary, is when you do that, you activate the oils in it, which is actually what you're trying to get out of it by cooking them with your food. And so that's done a lot. And that helps release the essence of it into your food. You'll get there eventually, but the ingredients in here so far is 1 sweet onion. The recipe is actually up on my Discord this time before stream. It is 6 to 8 boneless, skinless chicken thighs sliced. We've got 1 sweet onion that is diced here. And I have got and that was 3 tablespoons of butter in here that I'm using to cook it in. You can use cooking oil instead. I like the flavor butter gives things. And that has 1 tablespoon of parsley. It has a 1/2 teaspoon each of sage, basil, and oregano, and a 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary. And it is being cooked over medium temperature here. And when these are just a little bit more done, I am going to add the chicken to it. And I've already given you that. This is 16 ounces of white mushrooms. And they're cut up fairly well. And yeah, they look huge. I mean, some of these things look like absolute monsters. But when they cook, they're going to release their juices that are inside, which is these hold a lot of water. And when they release their juices, they're going to shrink by more than half. And you want to do that, and then you want to reduce it slightly, the liquid that comes out, so you don't just have a bunch of water in it. And I can see that the onions are about halfway to translucent. Usually takes about 5 minutes to cook them to that. I'm going to add the chicken in now because I've got a lot of chicken. I've got the chicken there, and I'm going to that all the way. And all this seasoning will go into the chicken and the onion paste and the herbs that are in here. I am going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to this now. And this is rock salt that I'm grinding. And that's probably all I'm going to salt it. But for people that aren't reducing their sodium, and I'm doing it for various members of a family, you probably want to add another 1/4 teaspoon to make it a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And eventually I will be putting pepper in here. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit to more of a medium high because I added the chicken to it. Yeah, you can use Himalayan salt. And yeah, those are like Italian seasonings. The oregano, the basil, the rosemary, those are considered Italian seasonings. And as I said, this is going to use about a 14-ounce can of quartered artichokes. And they come packed in water. And you drain them. And then you're left with these neat little cooked quarter artichokes. I use them when I made my home marinated artichokes on a stream. It's very convenient. I was actually thinking about making smothered chicken fried steak for my father, who's coming home tomorrow, but I'm not really up to eating beef yet, so I'm sure he'll be happy enough to have this casserole I'm making here. And like I said, there's two different versions of this. One of them uses a cooks and does the finished cooking in the oven, and this one is just going to be the stovetop version, which is quicker because before you put it in the oven, basically everything is already cooked, so that's convenient. And I am using, in this case, for the pasta, I have got mini penne. It's a little round tube. And they have a larger version of this. This is the small version like you would use for salads. And you want to cook it to slightly under al dente for this. So follow the box directions and take off about 2 minutes from their recommended cook time. And that will get you, if you're going to be baking it, the right temperature. If you're not going to be baking it, then cook it all the way to al dente, because this comes together pretty quick once the meat and the main portions of this get cooked. It comes together pretty darn quick. So I just need to make sure that the chicken is cooked all the way through when you're doing something like cooking it on the stove instead of in the oven. And another one of the ingredients it uses is a baby spinach. And this big bag of baby spinach is only 10 ounces. It's washed, it's ready to eat. You need to make sure that the spinach you get says washed, because spinach grows in sandy soil and the sand gets all over it, all through it. And this is a leaf that has a lot of little channels in it. And those channels love to trap spinach. It loves to trap the sand that's on the spinach. And you need to make sure that that sand is gone, not only because it's gritty in your teeth and really unpleasant to eat, but because you can actually get some illnesses from the sand. You can get an organism that causes your stomach to be really sick. So this is the little spinach leaf. You can buy them frozen and squeeze them out. You need to squeeze them out really well. But this big bag of spinach is like $2.99. It's not a big deal. It's very good for you. It's high in iron, high in vitamin K. It's good for your blood. And of course, it's just sort of delicious. Especially if you like vegetables. I know that a lot of people do not like spinach from a can, but this has not much resemblance to that. One of these days, I will be making a creamed spinach as a side dish for something, and I will show you how to do that. And that's just, once again, you make a white sauce from a roux, and you add that to your spinach. Most people add a little sauteed garlic. Obviously, I don't. And it makes a nice little side dish to poultry dishes and beef. Would work really well with pork, too. Just a nice little side dish to have, and a little fancier than just opening a can. I know that the Boston market used to serve creamed spinach as one of their options as a side dish. You love Spanish. That's one of your favorites. You mean Spanish cooking, things like paella and things like that. Paella is good. It's actually one of the recipes that got me to give my middle brother a copy of The Joy of Cooking for himself because I had asked for The Joy of Cooking. That was actually the very first recipe book that was my own. My very first, um, my very first cookbook was The Joy of Cooking. And in it, it had a recipe for paella. And my brother, Steve, loves paella. And it was something that he could put together when he was a bachelor, college, and such. And it was reasonably healthy, all one dish, made a lot. He seems to run in the family, don't you think? See, you did correct. You love spinach. Okay. But he kept calling me up and asking me for it and writing the recipe down, and then he'd throw it away and after he made it, and then a couple of weeks later he'd give me another call, and his birthday was coming up and I didn't know what else to get him, so I bought him The Joy of Cooking, and that actually stopped him from calling me about recipes for a really long time. So I am just letting this chicken saute over medium-high heat now, and it is getting very close to being about halfway done. It's lightly browned on all sides, but I know that the center of it is still very pink. So this is not in a condition that you actually want to eat it in. You can't taste the recipe at this stage either because, again, raw chicken. And although I know there are chefs that say, well, once upon a time you couldn't eat your chicken any way other than really thoroughly cooked, but now they raise the chickens differently, they're much healthier, so you can actually eat your chicken pink. You can eat it medium or medium rare. I don't follow to that. Salmonella, which is what you get from eating chicken that's not cooked all the way, is too serious of a foodborne illness to play with. You want to make sure you don't get this. Always cook your chicken until the flesh does not have any pink inside and the juices that run from it are also clear. They can't have any trace of pink in it. Um, I know that makes it difficult for people like my husband who are colorblind. So when he cooks chicken, unless I tell him how many minutes to cook it to get to that stage, he usually ends up coming to me. He usually comes to me anyway just to make sure that the chicken is cooked all the way through. Unless it's a whole chicken, and then he can just use a meat thermometer. So at this point where it's mostly cooked, I am going to add the mushrooms in because the mushrooms need to cook about 10 minutes to get cooked through, and that will allow the mushrooms to cook and it will allow them to release their juices, and in that 10 minutes the chicken will definitely be cooked through. Now, using a diced chicken, it would have cooked faster. Using sliced chicken, it's going to cook a little bit longer, especially as they weren't completely thawed. I would have cooked it about 8 minutes and then tested it to make sure it was done if it was completely thawed. But since it isn't, I am cooking the chicken about 12 to 15 minutes and then adding on another 15 minutes or 10 minutes, pardon me, for the mushrooms. And the mushrooms are just getting started, and the whole thing looks like it's never going to work. There's so much stuff in here, but it will, except for the chicken. The mushrooms will cook down, and they will go to less than half their size. And at this point, I am going to add some pepper to it, just a little light, like I said, about 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. And I have got these on a fairly fine grind. My husband isn't really fond of pepper, so I leave the pepper very light or out of it completely. You could probably do the same recipe with good results if you wanted to use pork instead. Um, yeah, pinks can look white, or if there's an underlying color like the color of beef where it's brown. Brown is a difficult color because brown is a green-based red mix, basically. So it's two colors combined that he has a hard time seeing. And so cooking hamburger, for instance, is usually something he has me check, or he just makes sure he really overcooks it. I try to give him times when he is cooking things instead of just giving him the physical markers of cook till no pink shows. Probably should make a habit of that, because although there's no one else in my family that is colorblind, he is, and some of my watchers may be colorblind as well. As a matter of fact, I know some of my followers are colorblind, so I should be more careful with that. All right. So get that out of the way. And I am going to pause and take a drink so I am hydrated. Alrighty then. Living with someone that's colorblind could be interesting. When I ask him for something that's purple, he very often holds up something blue and asks me, "Is this it?" And no, that's not it. But as he said, purple doesn't really exist for him, so I try to tell him things like the really dark blue blouse that has the lace on it, or I'll tell him the very light blue blanket when what it actually is a lavender blanket. In any case, it can also make it fun when he says things like the white car or the gray car, and it could be any shade of kind of a tealy blue-green, or it could be pink, or it could be green. Usually a shade of green, because there aren't a lot of pink cars out there. There are a few, and I usually have grave questions about the people that drive, for instance, pink pickups. It just doesn't seem a very, Ford tough color, I guess I should say. But, I know a lot of women that really like driving pickups. So I'm not surprised, but it's just kind of startling to me. As you can see here, if you look at this, there's quite a bit of liquid in here, and that is being released not only by the chicken and its cooking, it is also being released by the mushrooms. So the water is coming out of the mushrooms. They are shrinking now, and the water's coming out. I need to reduce that a little bit, and it will finish cooking the chicken too. As you can see, the herbs have now, by my constant stirring, they're all over everything in here. They are on the chicken, they're on the mushrooms, they're on the onions. And when I put the spinach in here to wilt, it is going to go on that as well. And stirring it through, it just makes it so that I don't have to cook this in several batches or multiple containers. I like to try to simplify as much as possible. If I can get away with a one pot meal, I'll do it. Less washing up is always better. I'm sure Andrew would agree with that. He already does enough washing where he washes things for me specific for the stream, and because he picks it out of somewhere and I say, it has dust on it. So he doesn't need to have more work added to it. I could have done this over several different fryings, so that I cooked the onions and then took them out, and then did the mushrooms and took them out, and then did something else and took them out, and made the sauce I'm going to make for this in a different dish. And no, I'm not going to do that. So I have got quite a bit of liquid in here now. The mushrooms have well and truly released their juices. They are about 2/3 the size they used to be. I believe the chicken is done. I will let the mushroom juice reduce a bit first. It is kind of lightly simmering under there, and uh, I'm going to give it probably 2 or 3 more minutes before I test some of the chicken, and hope it's done. That will also allow me at that point to test the seasoning, see whether or not it needs a little more salt. It probably will, because this is going to be added to a white sauce, and then 2 16-ounce boxes or 2 pounds of the penne pasta, because this is going to make a rather large casserole. I don't know how to cook small. I think I proved that last week with the soup when I intended to make half. Picture's blurry. Did that help? Honey, does it look blurry to you? I think I got it to focus. Did it focus for you? Badass mom? I'm looking at it on my monitor, and it seems to be in focus, so I can try to bring the camera down to me again. Come on, focus. There we go. Focused on my hand. Now slow down. And there, I think it's focused better now. It does try to autofocus all the time, so that kind of does things. Could also be yes, my husband can take over my computer while he's doing this, so actually he can do it anytime. We use something called TeamViewer that allows him to remotely access and fix my computer, set up my streams, debug things. And in general, when I say things like, my headset's not working, nobody can hear me with my microphone, he can come in there and play with the settings that I just continually don't know where they are. All right, I am going to take one of the bigger pieces of chicken here and plunk it down here on my table and throw the onion back up. I am going to cut through this. Ouch! Did you know this is hot? As you can possibly see, the chicken is cooked all the way through. It doesn't, the juices that are on the board from it are not pink. I'm going to taste it now. Very much Italian flavored. You can taste the basil, you can taste the oregano in it, you can taste the rosemary. It has a very Italian flavor without it being based in a tomato sauce. Because that is done, I am going to add spinach to it. And once again, this is going to look like a lot of spinach. It's really not. It's going to end up being less than a cup when it's wilted. But it has to wilt first. So you add spinach in here and it's all poofy. And then the heat hits it and it just shrinks. So even it out here. Take the other piece of chicken and do away with the evidence. All right. And now you just basically move this in here and start picking it up from the underneath carefully. A little hard to do, carefully. Trying to get it down to the hot liquid so that it will wilt. And it's just a matter of carefully lifting from underneath and kind of switching what's on top versus what's on bottom. And as you can see, the spinach that was on the bottom is already softening or wilting. Woohoo! Congratulations on the concealed carry. Always good to have if you're going to be carrying a gun around or have need to carry a gun. Oh, sorry. I thought that was from somebody else. I didn't actually read who it was from. And strange that you would have that email then, honey. Was it a joke? Yeah, what do I do with all of the juices? Well, they do cook down, and I that is all flavor. The mushroom juice that's in there cooks down, and when I put a white sauce into something like this, I make sure it's a little extra thick because I am accounting for the liquid that it already has in here. So that will thin the white sauce, so I make the white sauce a little extra thick. If I was going to just pour the white sauce over something like a vegetable, my white sauces would be a lot thinner, but because I'm generally accounting for cooking juices or a broth or something like that, I just use a thicker sauce. I use a thicker, I make it a little bit of a thicker roux. So it's got more thickening power when it gets in there with the milk and all. And I put it in not so it's just the ideal sauce thickness. I put it in so that it is actually something closer to the texture of a runny milkshake or a yogurt drink, so that when the liquids from cooking hit it, it doesn't thin it too much. So, and all of those cooking juices, they do cook down, but they're also packed full of flavor. You've got chicken flavor in here, and the onions and the herbs. The mushrooms have actually contributed with their juices to that flavor. And as you can see, 10 ounces of spinach really isn't that much anymore. It's mixed through the whole thing, and it's not really even added much to the volume of it now. So this is actually ready to come off. And I am going to take one of my plastic storage containers. And these are from Rubbermaid. They're called take-alongs. They tend to be larger sized, and they're nice quality. This is a 15-cup bowl. Really big bowls here. And that tends to be the size that we plan for because, well, you see how I cook. So I am going to take the cooked chicken and mushrooms and spinach mixture here, and I'm going to get enough of that up here so it's not a strain to pick it up at the end of my arms, because I've got, a pound of mushrooms and a couple pounds of chicken in here, and the pan itself, being a hard anodized pan, is actually quite substantial in and of itself. And picking things up at arm's length where I'm having to do it here, really kind of hard on the joints. So, especially when you start getting to be my age and older, and so I just try to lighten it up before I just tip it out. All right. And it's got cooking juices in it. It's got everything that I've cooked in here, all of the herbs, all of the spices. It has the onions and all of that. And I am just scraping the solids out here. I am going to use this pan again, just as it is, to make my white sauce, which is going to have a little bit of Parmesan in it. So I guess you would actually call it a cheese sauce. So I am going to take my butter and I am going to rather rapidly cut it up. It has been sitting here in the warmth, getting softer and softer. And that's about 7 tablespoons of butter. It's about 3/4 of a stick of butter. It's going to make a lot of white sauce because I've got a lot of pasta. I've got my 5-quart Dutch oven pretty much full of pasta, and that's going to be in addition to this. While that is melting, I'm going to add the artichoke hearts to this meat concoction because it will warm them when it does that. They don't need to be cooked any further. If you were going to put this in the oven, great, they'll stand up to it, but I don't want them to be cold because I'm doing this on the stovetop. All right. And where is my flour? There is my flour. I'm going to make sure that this is melted. And I need to turn the heat down. That is on medium high. And I do not want to burn it. So I'm going to stick the top on this so it stays nice and warm. Trying to balance that, I have got my flour here. I don't get that hooked on the cord. There we go. And a stick of butter is 1/2 cup. You want to use an equal amount or slightly less of flour. So I am measuring out basically a little shy of 1/2 cup of flour. I am using about 1/3 cup. And then you want to whisk that around, actually using your real whisk this time. And hey, Tiger Makes, how are you doing? Welcome in. Glad to see you say hello. When you are doing the roux, you want to have a little bit more butter than you do the flour. And again, you can use margarine for this instead of flour if you're vegetarian or vegan, although you obviously wouldn't want to be having this with chicken if you were vegetarian or vegan. You could be using a meat substitute, or you could be using tofu in its place. This would go well with that as well. If you are gluten-free, feel free to use gluten-free flour. That would work in this as well. And I've got the texture now of wet sand, which is what you're looking for. And I'm going to cook this for about 2 minutes to cook the flour flavor out of this. Yep, we are making a creamy casserole with chicken and spinach, artichokes, mushrooms, and a mini penne pasta. And it's going to be in a cream sauce that has a little bit of Parmesan cheese in it. And again, vegan, vegetarian, dairy, non-dairy needs. You can make this with oat milk and margarine or vegan butter. You can make it with vegan cheese if you can't have cheese, or just leave the cheese out. It adds a little bit of extra flavor in there. This has got interesting flavor profiles. It has, although it's in a white sauce, This has got the Italian seasonings in it. It's got parsley and sage. It's got rosemary, oregano, and basil. So it has a very Italian taste to it, even though it's not going to be a tomato base. Tomato bases don't work well in our family. My mother has a lot of trouble with acids. Of course, she can't drink the milk either, so she's allergic. So we see where I get my food allergies from. All right. This has cooked a couple minutes. This is 3.5 cups of milk. It's a little bit over what I was going to put in it, but only by 1/2 cup. And this has been sitting out to get it warm because you want to have your milk be warmer when you're making a white sauce like this, because when you take cold milk and put it in a hot roux, your roux has a tendency to seize up, and what that does is it gives you dumplings. What you get is cooked flour lumps that are uh, trying to be dumplings instead of mixing in with the milk and then thickening the entire batch. Now, once you start on a roux like this, once you start on a white sauce, you need to keep stirring the entire time. Cover the entire bottom of the surface, cover the walls, because where the heat source is where the thickening starts. And if you don't account for that, if you don't continue to stir, you'll have your sauce not only get clumpy, but it will also it'll burn. It'll be clumpy and it will burn. Um, if your sauce gets too thick, if your white sauce gets too thick, you can add, if it's a chicken dish, chicken broth to it. If it's a vegetable dish, you can add some vegetable broth. You can also add milk. You can add more milk. This white sauce is one of the 7 mother sauces, and every white-based sauce in the world is based on it. Hollandaise sauce is based on it, and no, I don't think it's hollandaise. Anyway, cheese sauces all start this way. And since I am going to be adding in about 1/3 of a cup of grated Parmesan, technically this is a cheese sauce. So it's just a matter of how much you add to it, and what you add to it, how strong it is. I am just adding a slight flavor of the Parmesan cheese, and otherwise it would be more like an Alfredo sauce if I added more. Um, Part of the reason why I held back on the sodium in the main dish when I was cooking that was because I do try to cook with less sodium for my family, but also because Parmesan cheese and other cheeses are really salty, especially Parmesan and Romano cheeses. Um, they're very, very salty. So you want to be easy there. Tell us what your hack is for white sauce, Badass Mama. Badass Mama, if you did not know her already, she does quick cooking streams on quick cooking videos, I should say, on YouTube. So you can look at her there, and she does both vegan and vegetarian cooking and gluten free. So uh, she's quite interesting to watch. Most of the time, I'll give you the options to my recipes. And although I am about 90% vegetarian, most of what you see me cook here will not be vegetarian food. I will do some vegetarian things as I have in the past. But I will say things like you can make this with gluten-free flour if you want to thicken your uh, gravy. You can use a flour and water slurry, or you can use arrowroot. A bolster? What do you mean a bolster? White sauces really aren't that difficult. They just take, hey LD, let's get a shout out for LD. He's a variety streamer, streams The Long Dark, is one of the foremost streamers for that and the Long Dark Society. He is also someone that I mod for when I'm on, when he's on, and he is a professional chef and quite a good one. So, welcome in, LD. Nice to see you. We are making a creamy chicken casserole with spinach, artichokes, and mushrooms, and I am at the point of making the semi-Alfredo sauce. It's a white sauce with some Parmesan in it. I've already cooked the chicken and mushrooms and onions and all of that, and it's seasoned with parsley, rosemary, sage, basil, and oregano. So it's got kind of an Italian profile, although it's a white sauce. Oh, I see. I see what you do. Okay. That's an interesting thing to do. I mean, I've seen people do that before, or just simply, you know, dump flour and things and expect it to come out right. That usually doesn't work. Mixing it up with the milk probably does. I'll have to give that a try sometime. This is starting to make a sauce. It is, if you can see, the consistency of it has changed. The little flecks that you see in it there, that's some of the parsley. You made carbonara? Ooh, I did that too. I made a seafood carbonara with prawns and smoked salmon. That was really yummy. Ooh, cornbread. Yum, yum, yum. I might have to go look for that recipe because I use the Jiffy mixes. That's what I've been using. And now I am going to add about a third of a cup of Parmesan cheese to this. It is about a quarter. There's a little over a third. I like cheese. What the heck? Now that the sauce has thickened up enough to be a sauce, now I'm whisking the cheese into it so that it will melt and thicken a bit more. As I said, I have already got those cooking juices in there from the chicken and the mushrooms, so that will thin this sauce. So I need to have it be a thicker sauce before I start out. And because I have almost 15 cups of the filling for it and about 15 cups of the pasta already made, and as you can see, this is starting to get really thick. If I were to put my spatula into it, you could see it's actually getting to be quite thick. It's not quite as thick yet as I want it to be, but the temperature is up enough. I need to lower it because you do not want this to boil. It will split your sauce. So I want to keep it from doing that. Pull it off of the heat. That will save it somewhat. And it will get to be quite thick before I am done. What I am looking for in this is the texture of about a half melted milkshake. It is a nice and smooth sauce so far. Sometimes I rush in the stream and I don't let the Parmesan cheese melt all the way, and then it looks like it's grainy or split. And it's really just that I didn't let it melt all the way, and when we have the leftovers and reheat them, they're all nice and smooth. But unfortunately, you guys don't get to see that. I'm going to put this back on the heat so it will finish thickening. It's almost to where I need it to be. The one thing about white sauces, you can't leave them alone. you need to keep fussing with them until they're as thick as you want them to be, and then you take them off the heat so they don't burn. So this is almost to the point where I want it. It is, well, it's the texture right now of a really nice thick chowder base. Um, you need it to go a little bit further than that when you're incorporating the cooking juices that I have in this. So I am going to let it go for just a little bit longer, and then I will start assembling the casserole. Now, if we were going to finish this on the stove, like I said, we would have left off a couple minutes. Yeah, you have to make sure you don't burn the bottom or don't burn the side, because once it burns, not only does it make a mess of your pan, but that flavor goes all through your sauce. It just tastes burnt and nasty, and that's just bad. So if this were to get too thick, I could thin it either with the cooking juices, or I could thin it with more milk. I could thin it with water. I never really worry about it getting too thick. Having the sauce go too thick for what you want is the least of your concerns. More what you should be concerned with is having it be not thick enough or not having cooked the flour so it tastes has a floury taste to it. And that just means the flour is raw. Not pleasant for the people cooking it. It's not pleasant for you. So one of those things, it's edible. It's not going to hurt you, but you will say, huh, a lot. Or at least that's what I do. All right, this is getting to be the right texture, so I'm done with that. Turn it off. Page not found on Instagram. What is that? Oh. Yeah, that's what happens. You burn something like that and you have to throw the whole thing away because the whole thing is just ruined. All right. So I have two of these big containers, and I am now going to take the filling that I have here. It has the chicken and spinach and mushrooms and the artichokes. Got the artichoke quarters here. And I am going to divide that between this and another container. And that was just simply sauteed with butter and the seasonings. As usual, I do not cook small. If you follow this recipe to the letter, as it is on my Discord, you will end up having two 13 by 9 casserole dishes filled with this, because it also has 2 pounds of pasta that need to go in there. And that's enough to fill any container. When we get to about half, I will pour away about half the juices into here. I've got not quite enough room on this table. That's not quite half. That's probably close. Now I'm going to take some of the liquid in here so that when I pour the white sauce between the two of them, I get an equal consistency between both batches. Like I said, if you were going to finish this in the oven, which is what the recipe is actually written to do, you would cook the pasta about 2 minutes less, so it's not quite done because it needs to account for the cooking time in the oven. So we would cook it 2 minutes less, and then we would say put it into the casserole dish in the oven for 25 minutes at 350. And now I am going to get out the mini penne that my husband cooked. And it's been sitting here off to the side, cooked and drained. And I'm going to add it in here. And it's about a 1 pound. If you were going to half this recipe, it is about a 1 pound box for a half of a recipe, a 16-ounce box of pasta. And this is 2 boxes because I like to cook a lot. After stream, we will get pictures of this up so that later on when you come back and are looking at my pictures, trying to figure out what it is you want to cook, you can take a look at this and say, oh, I think that looks good. I think I want to try to cook that. So I have pictures up of all of the recipes I've cooked. I have the recipes up. Well, I don't really think there's any challenge to cooking pasta. It's boil the water, put the pasta in it, let it cook till it's al dente, and then you take and you put, you drain it and rinse it and put it in there. It's easier if I don't have to try to do that with just 2 burners here. Up, 2, it's over. Pull the pasta up. Yeah, this stream would not be possible without my husband. Not only does he do all of the tech for it and mod for me, but he does all of the setup for this and the teardown and cleaning because I can't carry things. So it's really not possible it wouldn't be possible for me to do this without him. So my husband is a really wonderful, supportive man that without him, this stream would not be possible. Nor would my cooking for the family be possible. So that makes me something behind it too, because I know he does enjoy my cooking. So this is just sticking lightly to itself because it's been sitting there for the last hour. So I am just putting it in here and then splitting it up in my hands, just kind of ruffling it so it separates. Get the stickiness there. No, unfortunately, we do not have a big apartment. This table I'm cooking on is butted up against my chair, and it pretty much takes up all of the room except a narrow walkway to get through to my mother's chair, and then there's a walkway between the kitchen and here, and that's it. This table is 2 foot by 4 foot, and it pretty much half fills the place. So I have got about half the sauce in this one. Now, again, mixing from the bottom so that I lift the underside ingredients up so it will mix the cooking liquids and the pasta and sauce and the chicken all through this. You could make more sauce if you like to have things more saucy than this, but we kind of like things lightly coated. We live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. The 3rd bedroom is Andrew's office. It's really more of a den. It has a tiny little closet, and it's kind of one of those rooms that they cut off part of it so that it's at an angle. And I don't think you could get more than a crib in there, really. And aside from the master bedroom, which is okay size for an apartment, it is not big. I'll just say it. It's not big. I'm going to go ahead and add more sauce and just make more for the other half after stream because this just needs more sauce. I'm going to increase the amount of sauce that I add to 4 cups of milk in the recipe for this. So I do a lot of things by texture and by appearance. That's the way my grandmother cooked too. And I just adjust on the fly for how much it is I'm making. As you can see, this is getting nicely creamy. We actually have a fairly large master bathroom. It's made for um, handicap access. It's not handicap compliant, except you could get a wheelchair in there. Other than that, it's got no bars, it's got nothing else. Okay, so I have got this. Now I just need to have a dish for plating up and a fork for tasting, because tasting is important. And the cooking juices have gone all through here. Okay. So I am going to need to put the rest of that sauce scraped into there, honey, but I'm going to need to make more sauce for the second one. If you want to use this in the middle. Uh, okay. Make sure I have everything well represented in here. Got the artichoke and the mushrooms and the chicken. It's fun trying to make it so it's also pretty for the photographs. Okay, so we have got this put together here. I'm going to make sure a mushroom is showing and some of the spinach, one of the artichokes, and of course I need to make sure that chicken is showing. Where do I have a chicken in here? Here's a chicken. There you go for the photograph, sweetheart. And I will taste this for the people. So I have got some of the sauce and a little bit of the chicken, and I've got some of the artichoke here and the pasta. And I, of course, dropped part of it now because that's a lot to be putting onto one fork. I've got it all speared now. Good. Okay, this is a lightly creamy sauce. You can taste a little bit of uh, the Parmesan in it. You can taste the spinach. You can taste the seasonings that are in it, the Italian seasonings. The chicken, obviously, and the mushrooms. The sauce is a nice, light, creamy sauce. And the artichoke is a very mild flavor in this. And as is the cheese, it's very subtle. It's just a really nice, light pasta dish with Italian flavorings despite being a cream sauce. So this is really good. I highly recommend it. Are you going to be streaming, LD, or are you pretty much just dropping in and seeing people? Again, The recipe for this is up on my Discord. I will correct it to adding more sauce. And I really recommend you make this. It's kind of a one dish thing that you could serve it if you wanted to make it a little heavier with some rolls and butter, or you could serve it with a nice green salad and add more vegetables to your evening meal. This will freeze well, it will reheat well, and I hope you enjoy this. I am going to hope you stick around. I am going to give a raid to a variety streamer called Queen Shark. And she is a sex educator who is absolutely nuts about sharks. And she streams games, especially scary games, and lets you scare her during the games. She's lots of fun. Wonderful person. I do hope you stick around for her raid. And thank you so much for coming, everybody who is here already and is sticking with us. And we will see you on Sunday. Thank you for coming.